Hello everyone and welcome to Film Etc., the only movie review podcast you need in life. My name is Mike Webb, I'll be your host, and if you guys are new to the show, welcome. Normally I would do this show on a weekly basis and review at least 3 movies, but there's been so much stress and weight on my shoulders that I had to just release it all and just narrow it down to just one movie review per episode. But this week I got a real treat for you guys. We have a new movie called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It stars Nicolas Cage as Nicolas Cage. But I can't wait to give you all my thoughts on this, so let's get started, shall we? Now, before we get into this review, I must cap you off with a warning. If you guys are new to the show, or if this is your first time, or if you need a little bit of refresher, I am diagnosed with autism, so you may hear my wording get jumbled up a bit. So I hope you all forgive me, and I hope you all enjoy. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is the sophomore effort from writer-director Tom Gormican, who previously made his debut with the 2014 rom-com That Awkward Moment. The film stars Nicolas Cage as himself in this meta-narrative where he is clearly looking for a new role in a film and is in financial ruin. He is then given an offer of $1 million to attend the birthday party of a wealthy yet dangerous superfan named Javi, played by Pedro Pascal, in his estate in Mallorca off the coast of Spain. Things take a wildly unexpected turn when Cage is recruited by 2 CIA operatives, played by Tiffany, Haddish and Barinholtz, and forced to live up to his own legend, channeling his most iconic and beloved on-screen characters in order to save himself and his loved ones. The film also stars Sharon Horgan, Alessandra Mastronardi, Jacob Scipio, Sheen, Paco Leon, and Neil Patrick Harris. Now, I want to say to all of you, just to get this out of the way, this is an R-rated movie, so this is not for everyone. But it's not one of those R-rated movies where it's filled with sex and nudity. No, it's very profane and it's got a little bit of drugs and alcohol use and a little bit of violence, but that's basically it. But if you're trying to take someone who's young or something like that, I think the minimum age I would take someone is probably 16 years old, I want to say. But just be advised. Now, every now and then you will see a celebrity in a cameo role, but rarely do you see the actual celebrity become center stage playing themselves for a majority of the film's narrative. And the meta narrative structure is nothing new. The earliest example you could go back to, or at least to my knowledge, are the films the Beatles starred in, whether it's A Hard Day's Night or Help, or even to some extent Yellow Submarine. You could also look at movies like Irma Vep, which stars Maggie Cheung as herself, Being John Malkovich, or JCVD with Jean-Claude Van Damme, or Cold Souls with Paul Giamatti. But this movie is probably the best meta-narrative movie I've seen thus far. But I wouldn't say this movie is a satirical approach on Hollywood and stuff. It's more like Nicolas Cage playing a quasi version of himself who's down on his luck, trying to get the acting role. Early on in the movie, he's talking to David Gordon Green and trying to get a role that he's wanting to act in. And it basically, where this movie goes, it kind of plays out like a buddy comedy when he's been asked to go and get this $1 million deal to attend a superfan's birthday party. And the superfan may be dangerous, but he's also a screenwriter and he wants to get a movie made starring Nicolas Cage. And yeah, and this movie is just pure popcorn entertainment. This is one of the funniest movies I've seen in a very long time, and it's very self-aware of itself and doesn't take itself seriously. Mostly when I say movies that don't take itself seriously, I think it's sort of like a guilty pleasure. But this one is just more than your average guilty pleasure. It's a movie straight up for diehard Nicolas Cage fans, even if you don't know every single movie Nick Cage is in. But even if you don't get all the references, the meta humor is perfectly on point and you'll be laughing nonstop from the very beginning. But yeah, Nicolas Cage, he calls his acting techniques something called nouveau shamanic. And I have a quote that I just looked up on Google saying nouveau shamanic is nothing other than trying to augment your imagination to get to the performance without feeling like you're faking it. And for that reason alone, I think that's the reason why Nicolas Cage is just like fully committed on doing acting, where even if the story isn't that good, he gives like 150% to his talent. And speaking about references, there's a lot of movie references, mostly the Nick Cage references. Like you see at the beginning, there's Con Air playing in the background on the TV. And then there's like little hints and nuggets throughout, from like Mandy to Guarding Tess to Captain Corelli's mandolin, like some of the deep cuts that you don't necessarily expect coming. There's also other movie references like uh, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari to Paddington 2 in a very hilarious bit. But yeah. And I like how both Cage and Pedro Pascal have this weird chemistry that's very fish out of water, I want to say. And it's a chemistry that I also would say is very fun. And they kind of have this like bromance where Pedro Pascal's character, he just loves Nick Cage. And he's just like excited that he's here, while at the same time he wants to get the movie that he wants to make off the ground, because he has a polished script ready to go. And then Nick Cage decides to get like ideas later on to like improve the movie. The CIA stuff is a little bit hit or miss for me. I'm not the biggest fans of either Tiffany Haddish or Ike Barinholtz. I mean, they can be funny. It's just their characters are a little bit one note, I would say. Like they're just like completely surprised that Nick Cage is somehow here, and then they somehow recruit him to like take down Pedro Pascal's character, because there's this like conspiracy where there's this like abduction of like some I think it's like a politician's daughter that's been kidnapped. It's like in the first like minute of the film where you see some politician's daughter get kidnapped. And this is while they were watching the movie Con Air. I think it's like towards like the end of Con Air. And then she gets kidnapped and abducted. But a lot of people recently, or at least I've heard recently, that some people are comparing this movie to the Seth Rogen, James Franco film, The Interview, which came out back in 2014, which I've not seen. But if you don't know what that movie is about, just look it up, because I don't want to sit here and tell you all about it, because you may be surprised, and I don't want to get hacked, to say the least. But back to massive talent. Nick Cage is golden as Nick Cage. He steals the show, as well as Pedro Pascal. He completely surprised me. But I would also give credit to Sharon Horgan. Some of you may know her from the movie Game Night. She's an Irish actress, but she put a British accent on for Game Night. And in this role, she plays a fictionalized version of Cage's ex-wife. And there's this like little side story where Nick Cage is being fully committed to acting, where he just spends very little time with his family. Where and in this movie he has an ex-wife and a daughter. Nick Cage does not have a daughter in real life. I think he has two sons, and I believe with his new girlfriend there's another baby expecting, I want to say. And so yeah, Neil Patrick Harris has a small role playing Nicolas Cage's agent. He only like shows up for like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, but he mostly explains about the deal that Nicolas Cage is being offered to go and be at Pedro Pascal's party. But I just felt like he was a little bit of a it was just there for a little bit of exposition dump. Nothing more, nothing less. Not too bad, I would say. It's just early on in the movie, and then later on in the middle of the movie, Nicolas Cage imagines a younger version of himself named Nicky, and he just like gives him like his like words of like, you're like the biggest star on the planet right now, and I gotta use you as my mantra and everything like that. I just did a little Nicolas Cage impersonation, if you didn't mind that. And that whole sequence alone is like laugh out loud. There's also a moment where Nicolas Cage and Javi, which is Pedro Pascal's character, they're high on LSD, and then they see like two people who they think they're like spies or something like that, and they try to run away, and then they come to this wall and then what goes is just hilarity. Like I died laughing at that scene. But yeah, moments like that in this movie are just like incredible to watch. There's a ton of moments like that throughout this movie. Like I mentioned, seeing the digitally de-aged version of Nicolas Cage. There's a lot of moments where he's like in Spain. He is around Pedro Pascal's home. And then there's this like secret room where it's just like a bunch of memorabilia. And then there's this wax figure of Nicolas Cage as the character of, I believe it's Troy Caster from the movie Face Off. I haven't seen Face Off in a long, long time, but it's a little bit of a fuzzy memory. But yeah, there's just like a bunch of funny moments. There's one where they just like act each other's butt off, and then they just like go off a cliff, and they're just like, I didn't know it could be that high or something like that. Yeah, I took my parents to this movie with me because they saw the trailer, they were interested, and we went. We all had a blast watching it. For flaws, I would say again, I would say the CIA stuff is like hit or miss from there. And when it like becomes kind of like an action movie, it just like loses its steam, especially around the last 15 to 20 minutes when the full plot gets into gear, and it just like loses me for a little bit. But I still had an enjoyable time. I know my parents did as well. I don't wholly recommend it to everyone, but I will say though, if you do love Nicolas Cage, um, the humor will make you end up in stitches. It is loads of fun, and it is pure. And I mentioned it is pure popcorn entertainment. So yeah, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is currently playing in theaters, and it's probably going to hit on VOD probably within like a month or two. I would give it a solid 7.5, 7.5, or 7.7 out of 10. So yeah, that's going to do it for my review. So now let's end this episode and call it a day. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for my review of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Have you seen this movie? What are your thoughts? Were you surprised by this, or were you a little bit off of because of the meta narrative? Let me know your thoughts. I'm on social media at Real Mike Webb on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can also follow the show on Instagram at FilmETCcast. Make sure you subscribe and follow this show on the many places that we stream, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it. Leave a good rating, leave a 5-star review on our Apple Podcast page. That will help get the show up to the top of the charts. Tell your friends, spread the word of mouth if you must. I'll be back really soon with more reviews. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I will see you all at the cinema.